The morning sun streaming through my apartment window felt almost accusatory as I smoothed down my navy pencil skirt for the third time. 24 years old, and I was finally starting a real career position, not another internship or temp job. Secretary at Viteri Holdings. The name had weight in this city, though I wasn't entirely sure why. I adjusted the hem of my skirt, which fell just above my knee. Professional. Appropriate. The white silk blouse was conservative enough, buttoned to a respectable height, and my dark hair was pulled into a neat low bun. My reflection showed exactly what I'd intended. Competent, polished, ready. The subway ride downtown took 40 minutes, giving me plenty of time to review everything I knew about my new employer. Viteri Holdings owned commercial real estate throughout the city, along with several upscale restaurants, and what the website vaguely termed import consultancy services. Roman Viteri himself was 32, according to the brief bio I'd found. Stanford educated, took over the family business at 28 after his father's retirement. What the corporate website didn't mention, but what I'd pieced together from whispered conversations and careful Google searches, was that the Viteri name carried a different kind of weight in certain circles, the kind that made people's voices drop when they spoke it, the kind that meant his buildings never had permit issues, his restaurants never failed health inspections, and his business rivals tended to suddenly relocate to other cities. I should have been more concerned. Should have questioned why the salary was nearly double what other executive assistant positions offered. Should have wondered why 3 previous secretaries had quit within 6 months. But I needed this job. Needed the health insurance, the stability, the chance to finally pay off my student loans. Needed to prove to myself that I could make it in this city that had chewed up and spit out so many of my college classmates. The Viteri Holdings building occupied an entire block in the financial district, all glass and steel reaching 30 stories into the morning sky. The lobby was marble and chrome, with security that rivaled airport TSA. I showed my new employee ID to 3 different checkpoints before reaching the executive elevator that would take me to the 28th floor. My stomach did a small flip as the elevator climbed. First day nerves, nothing more. I'd handled difficult bosses before. I could handle Roman Viteri. The executive floor was hushed luxury, thick carpet muffled footsteps, original artwork lined walls painted in tasteful grays and creams. Floor-to-ceiling windows offered panoramic views of the city sprawling below. My desk sat in an alcove just outside the corner office, positioned so I'd have a clear view of anyone approaching while maintaining some privacy. "You must be Nora." A woman in her 50s approached, her burgundy suit impeccable, her smile professional but warm. "I'm Patricia, Mr. Viteri's Director of Operations. I'll be showing you the ropes this morning before he arrives." "Thank you." I set my bag in the desk drawer, taking in the dual monitors, the sleek phone system, the stack of files already waiting for my attention. "What time does Mr. Viteri usually get in?" 9:30 precisely. He's never late, never early. You'll learn he's very particular about routines. Patricia opened the top file, revealing a detailed calendar. "Your primary responsibility is managing his schedule. Everything goes through you. Every meeting, every call, every visitor. He doesn't like surprises." We spent the next hour reviewing systems and protocols. Mr. Viteri took his coffee black, brought from a specific cafe 2 blocks away each morning. He preferred digital files, but required physical backups of all contracts. His dry cleaning was picked up Tuesdays and Fridays. Lunch meetings were scheduled for 1 o'clock. Never earlier, never later. Personal calls were transferred to his private line without screening. "The most important thing," Patricia said, lowering her voice slightly, "is discretion. Mr. Viteri's business often involves sensitive information. What you see, what you hear, stays in this office. Always." I nodded, filing away the warning. At 9:25, Patricia straightened, smoothing her already perfect suit. "He'll be here in 5 minutes. Remember, he appreciates efficiency and professionalism above all else." She left, and I found myself alone with my racing pulse. I pulled up his calendar on my computer, familiarizing myself with today's appointments. 10 o'clock, meeting with City Planning Commission. 11:30 call with an architect. 1 o'clock lunch with someone listed only as VM. 3 o'clock, another vague entry, warehouse inspection. At exactly 9:30, the elevator chimed. I looked up from my computer, schooling my expression into polite professionalism. Roman Viteri stepped into the hallway, and every carefully prepared greeting died in my throat. Photographs hadn't prepared me. Nothing could have. He was tall, easily 6'2", with the kind of build that came from disciplined gym routines, not vanity. Dark hair cut precisely, not a strand out of place. Sharp jaw shadowed with the barest hint of stubble. But it was his eyes that stopped me cold. Dark, intense, missing nothing as they swept the space with the practiced assessment of someone who automatically cataloged every detail, every potential threat. He wore a charcoal suit that had definitely been tailored specifically for him, the fabric moving with fluid precision as he walked. No tie yet, his white shirt open at the collar revealing tan skin and the suggestion of muscle beneath. Everything about him radiated controlled power, the kind that didn't need to announce itself because everyone already knew. Our eyes met. Held. Something electric passed through the air between us. Something I couldn't name and definitely shouldn't be feeling on my first day of work. Mr. Viteri. I stood, extending my hand, with what I hoped was appropriate professional courtesy. I'm Nora Chen, your new secretary. It's a pleasure to meet you. He crossed the space between us in 3 strides, taking my hand in a grip that was firm without being aggressive. His palm was warm, slightly calloused in a way that suggested he did more than push papers. The contact lasted exactly the appropriate amount of time, yet somehow felt both too long and not long enough. Ms. Chen. His voice was deep, with the faintest trace of an accent I couldn't quite place. Patricia's given you the orientation? Yes, sir. I'm familiar with your schedule and preferences. His gaze traveled over me then, a quick but thorough assessment that I felt like a physical touch. His jaw tightened almost imperceptibly, a muscle jumping beneath the skin. When his eyes returned to mine, something had shifted in them. Something darker. Come into my office. Not a request. He was already moving, expecting me to follow. I grabbed my tablet and a pen, trailing him into the corner office. It was exactly what I'd expected. Massive desk positioned to face the windows, giving him both the view and the psychological advantage of having visitors backlit. Built-in shelves held leather-bound books and what looked like ancient artifacts. The art on the walls was original, probably worth more than my annual salary. Everything was ordered, controlled, radiating the same contained power as the man himself. Roman moved to stand behind his desk, but didn't sit. Instead, he braced his hands on the polished surface, looking at me with an expression I couldn't read. Who told you to dress like that? The question was quiet, almost conversational, but I heard the edge beneath it. I blinked, genuinely confused. I'm sorry? Your skirt. His eyes dropped to it briefly before returning to my face. It's inappropriate. Heat flooded my cheeks, equal parts embarrassment and indignation. I looked down at my outfit, which I'd selected specifically for its professionalism. The skirt was navy blue, modest in length, paired with a conservative blouse and sensible heels. I don't understand. This is standard business attire. For a nightclub, perhaps. His voice remained level, but tension radiated from every line of his body. Not for my office. Something sparked in my chest then. Not fear, though maybe it should have been. Not quite anger, though that was part of it. Something else. Something that made me lift my chin instead of ducking my head, made me meet his intense gaze directly instead of looking away. This skirt is well within professional standards, Mr. Viteri. It's neither too short nor too tight. I kept my voice steady, professional, but I didn't back down. If you have specific dress code requirements beyond standard business formal, I'd be happy to review them. For a moment, silence filled the office. Roman's eyes narrowed slightly, studying me with renewed intensity. I stood my ground, heart pounding but refusing to show it. I'd dealt with difficult bosses before, men who tried to use their authority to make women uncomfortable. I wouldn't let this job, no matter how much I needed it, turn me into someone who accepted that behavior without question. You're right. The admission came quietly, surprising me. The skirt is professional. I apologize. He turned away then, moving to the windows that overlooked the city. With his back to me, some of the tension left his shoulders, though his posture remained rigid. I have high standards for this office, he continued, still not looking at me. Sometimes I'm perhaps too particular. Understood, sir. I waited, uncertain if I should leave or stay. The moment felt strange, charged with something I didn't understand. He turned back, his expression once again controlled, professional. Your first task, reschedule my 10 o'clock. Something's come up. Move it to tomorrow, same time. Then order lunch for the 1 o'clock meeting. Giuseppe's the usual. Of course. I made notes on my tablet. Will there be anything else? Not at the moment. He sat finally, pulling his computer toward him in a clear dismissal. Close the door on your way out. I left, pulling the heavy door shut behind me. Only when I was safely back at my desk did I allow myself to really breathe. My hands trembled slightly as I reached for the phone to make the necessary calls. What had just happened? The intensity of his reaction to my completely professional outfit, his sudden apology, the way he'd looked at me like I was both a problem and a puzzle he couldn't quite solve. I should have been upset, should have been planning my resignation. But instead, I felt oddly energized. That spark I'd felt when I challenged him, when I refused to immediately back down. It had awakened something in me I hadn't known was sleeping. The morning passed in a flurry of phone calls and emails. Rescheduling the city planning meeting took 3 calls and some careful diplomacy. Ordering from Giuseppe's required navigating a host who clearly knew exactly who was calling and treated the request with reverent attention to detail. I familiarized myself with the filing system, the contact database, the dozens of small details that would make me efficient in this role. Roman emerged from his office twice. Once to grab a file from the cabinet near my desk, his presence filling the space even though he didn't speak. Once to take a call on his private line, his voice too low for me to hear the conversation, but his expression darkening with whatever was being said. Each time, I felt his eyes on me. Brief glances that shouldn't have meant anything but somehow felt weighted with the same intensity as that initial confrontation. At 11:15, a delivery arrived. Not his dry cleaning or his coffee. A large boutique shopping bag with tissue paper and a discreet logo I recognized as belonging to one of the city's most exclusive women's clothing stores. The delivery woman smiled professionally. For Ms. Chen, courtesy of Mr. Viteri. I signed for it automatically, too shocked to do otherwise. Once alone, I pulled aside the tissue paper to reveal a skirt. Designer, beautiful, in a soft charcoal gray that would coordinate with dozens of blouses. I checked the tag. My size exactly. The length was nearly identical to the one I was wearing. A small card nestled in the tissue paper. I opened it to find a single sentence in bold, masculine handwriting. An apology for my poor manners this morning. RV. I stared at the skirt, at the card, trying to process what this meant. He'd apologized verbally, then followed it up by buying me expensive clothing that wasn't actually different from what I'd been wearing. Was this a peace offering? A power play? Both? I should return it. Should walk into his office right now, and politely decline such an extravagant and inappropriate gift from my brand new employer. But my fingers traced the soft fabric, and I thought about the intensity in his eyes when he'd looked at me, the way something had sparked between us in those charged moments. Instead of returning it, I carefully folded the skirt back into its tissue paper and placed the bag in my desk drawer. I'd decide what to do with it later. Right now, I had work to focus on. The 1:00 lunch meeting brought 3 men in expensive suits who all treated me with careful, impersonal courtesy. They filed into Roman's office, the door closing behind them. Through the heavy wood, I heard only the murmur of voices, nothing distinct. They emerged 90 minutes later, looking satisfied. Whatever business they'd conducted had gone well. Roman walked them to the elevator personally, his hand on each man's shoulder in turn, his smile easy and professional. The moment the elevator doors closed, the smile vanished. He returned to his office without looking at me. At 3:00, he emerged in different clothes. The suit jacket was gone, replaced by a black leather jacket. The white shirt was rolled to his elbows, revealing forearms corded with muscle and, I noticed, the edge of what might be a tattoo on his left wrist. "I'll be out for the rest of the day." He was already moving toward the elevator. "Forward any urgent calls to my cell. Everything else can wait until tomorrow." "Of course, Mr. Viteri." I watched him disappear into the elevator, wondering what warehouse inspection actually meant, wondering if I wanted to know. The rest of the afternoon was quiet. I organized files, familiarized myself with the various databases and systems, and tried not to think about the skirt in my drawer or the man who'd given it to me. Tried not to think about the way my pulse had jumped when he'd looked at me, or the strange feeling that everything had just become far more complicated than a simple job. At 5:30, I gathered my things, locked my computer, and headed for the elevator. The building was quieter now, most employees already gone for the day. My reflection in the elevator's mirrored walls showed a woman who looked composed, professional, unremarkable. But I felt different. Like something had shifted today, some door had opened that I wasn't sure I knew how to close. Like I'd stepped into a world that was more complex and dangerous than I'd understood when I'd accepted this position. The subway platform was crowded with evening commuters. I found a spot against a pillar, pulling out my phone to mindlessly scroll through news while waiting for the train. A text came through from an unknown number. "Thank you for your professional handling of today's challenges. You did well for your first day. RV." I stared at the message, my heart doing something complicated in my chest. He had my personal number. Of course he did. He probably had access to every detail of my life, background check and beyond. But the fact that he'd used it, that he'd reached out after hours. I typed and deleted 3 different responses before settling on something safe and professional. "Thank you, Mr. Viteri. I look forward to tomorrow." The response came immediately. "Roman. After hours, call me Roman." The train arrived before I could figure out how to respond to that. I tucked my phone away and stepped into the crowded car, my mind already spinning with questions I probably shouldn't be asking, about my new boss, about the intensity I'd felt in his office, about the way something inside me had responded to his attention, in a way that was definitely not professional. Tomorrow, I told myself. Tomorrow I'd establish better boundaries, maintain appropriate distance, be the perfect professional secretary. Tomorrow I'd return the skirt and politely decline any further personal gestures. But even as I made these promises to myself, I knew I was lying, because when Roman had looked at me with that intensity, when he'd challenged me and I'd challenged him back, I'd felt more alive than I had in months, more seen, more present in my own skin. And that feeling, dangerous as it might be, was intoxicating. I wore the gray skirt the next morning. The decision happened almost without conscious thought. I told myself it was practical. The skirt was beautiful, expensive, and would pair perfectly with the cream blouse I'd planned to wear. Told myself returning it would be awkward, might insult Roman after his apology. Told myself a dozen reasonable justifications that didn't quite cover the real truth. I wanted to see how he'd react. The subway ride felt longer than yesterday, anticipation coiling in my stomach like a spring wound too tight. I'd spent half the night replaying our interactions, analyzing every word, every look. The intensity in his eyes when he'd criticized my outfit. The way his jaw had tightened. The unexpected apology, both verbal and material. The text message that had shifted our relationship from purely professional to something less defined. Call me Roman. I'd turned those words over in my mind until sleep finally claimed me near dawn. What did it mean? Was it simply a powerful man preferring informality after hours? Or was it something else? An invitation into a space that existed outside the normal employer-employee boundaries? The Viteri Holdings building looked different in the early morning light, more imposing somehow. I'd arrived 15 minutes early, wanting to be settled before Roman arrived at his precisely 9:30 routine. Patricia was already at her desk on the executive floor when I emerged from the elevator. Good morning, Nora. Her eyes flickered briefly to my skirt, and something that might have been approval crossed her features. Coffee? Please. I set my bag at my desk, powering up the computer. Anything I should know about today's schedule? Mr. Viteri has a morning meeting with the construction union representatives. Could get contentious. She handed me a perfectly prepared cappuccino. And he's asked that you sit in, take notes. I must have looked surprised because Patricia smiled slightly. He doesn't usually have his secretary attend meetings, but he specifically requested your presence for this one. Consider it a learning opportunity. Or a test, I thought, sipping the coffee. A chance to see how I handled pressure, conflict, the reality of whatever business Roman actually conducted beyond the corporate facade. At 9:28, I heard the elevator chime. My pulse quickened traitorously as Roman stepped into the hallway, and I hated myself a little for the reaction. He wore navy today, the suit jacket perfectly tailored, the crisp white shirt beneath it open at the collar, in that way that somehow looked both casual and deliberately controlled. His dark hair was slightly damp, like he'd recently showered, and I caught a hint of his cologne. Something expensive with notes of cedar and spice. Our eyes met. His gaze dropped immediately to my skirt, and I watched his expression shift through several emotions too quickly to name. His jaw tightened. His hands, I noticed, clenched briefly at his sides before he consciously relaxed them. Ms. Chen. His voice was carefully neutral. Good morning. Good morning, Mr. Viteri. I kept my tone professional, but I didn't look away. Didn't duck my head or apologize for wearing his gift. Just met his eyes steadily, letting him see that I'd made a choice. The skirt suits you. He moved past me toward his office, and I caught the barest hint of tension in his shoulders. The union representatives will be here in 20 minutes. Bring your tablet. He disappeared into his office, leaving me alone with my racing heart and the knowledge that something had definitely shifted between us. The skirt wasn't just clothing anymore. It was a statement, a response to an unspoken question, a piece moved in whatever game we were apparently playing. Patricia appeared at my elbow. He seemed pleased. Did he? I turned to my computer, pulling up the necessary files for the meeting. Roman isn't easy to read, but I've worked for him for 8 years. Trust me, he's pleased. She paused. Be careful, Nora. The warning was gentle but clear. I looked up at her, finding concern in her eyes. Careful of what? Roman Viteri is a complicated man. Powerful, brilliant, loyal to those he trusts. She lowered her voice. But his world isn't like other people's. The rules are different. The stakes are higher. And getting close to him means accepting things that someone with your background might find difficult. Someone with my background. Translation. Someone not born into the subtle violence of organized power. Someone who still believed the world operated according to laws and ethics, and clear boundaries between right and wrong. "I understand," I said, even though I wasn't sure I did. "Thank you for the warning." She nodded and left, and I was alone with my thoughts until the elevator chimed again. 4 men emerged, all broad-shouldered and thick-necked, wearing suits that looked uncomfortable on their muscular frames. Union representatives, clearly, but there was something else about them. A hardness in their eyes, a way of moving that suggested they were used to physical confrontation. "Gentlemen?" I stood, gesturing toward the waiting area. "Mr. Viteri will be with you shortly. Can I offer you coffee?" They settled into the chairs, declining refreshments with curt shakes of their heads. I informed Roman of their arrival through the intercom, then gathered my tablet and pen, steeling myself for whatever was about to happen. Roman emerged, his expression pleasant, but his eyes sharp. "Gentlemen, thank you for coming." He shook hands with each man, his grip firm, his body language radiating controlled confidence. "Please, come in." They filed into his office, and I followed, taking a seat slightly apart from the main cluster of chairs, positioning myself where I could observe without being directly involved. Roman settled behind his desk, the massive piece of furniture giving him both physical and psychological dominance. "So," he steepled his fingers, his gaze moving from face to face. "We're here to discuss the issues at the Riverside construction site." The largest of the union men leaned forward, his expression aggressive. "Issues? That's one word for it. My guys have been getting pressured, told to rush work, skip safety protocols, cut corners." "By whom?" Roman's voice remained calm. "Your foreman, DeMarco." The man's jaw tightened. "We've filed formal complaints, 3 times now. Nothing's changed." "I see." Roman pulled a file from his desk, opening it to reveal what looked like detailed reports. "These complaints, they're quite specific about times, dates, witnesses." He looked up. "Also quite convenient in their timing, coming right as we're negotiating the contract renewal." The tension in the room ratcheted up several notches. The union representative's face darkened. "You calling my men liars?" "I'm noting the timing." Roman closed the file carefully. "And I'm also noting that DeMarco has been with Viteri Holdings for 15 years. 0 safety violations, 0 complaints until 3 weeks ago. That's an interesting pattern." I watched, fascinated despite myself, as Roman methodically picked apart each complaint, revealing inconsistencies and convenient gaps in the allegations. He never raised his voice, never displayed anger. Instead, he used facts like surgical instruments, cutting away deception with precise efficiency. The largest man stood suddenly, his chair scraping back. "We're done here." "Sit down, Marcus." Roman's voice didn't change in volume, but something shifted in it. Something cold and absolutely unyielding. "We're done when I say we're done." For a moment, I thought the man would refuse. Violence seemed to shimmer in the air like heat waves. Then, slowly, Marcus sat. Not because he wanted to, but because something in Roman's eyes made it clear that refusing wasn't actually an option. "Here's what's going to happen," Roman continued, his tone conversational again. "You're going to drop these manufactured complaints. I'm going to pretend I don't know that Castellano put you up to this, trying to leverage labor issues to force me to sell him the Riverside property." Marcus's face went pale. "In exchange," Roman said, "I'll increase the pension contribution by 3% and guarantee no layoffs through the end of next year. The contract renewal will be signed with these terms." He slid a document across the desk. "Your men get better benefits, better security. All you have to do is stop being a pawn in someone else's game." I watched Marcus read the document, saw greed and fear war across his features. Roman waited patiently, a chess master who already knew how this would end. How do we know Castellano won't? Marcus trailed off, the unspoken threat hanging in the air. Because I'll make it clear to him that you're under my protection now. Roman's smile didn't reach his eyes. And Castellano, for all his ambitions, isn't stupid enough to move against people I've claimed. The word claimed echoed in my head, the casual way Roman said it, like ownership was a simple fact of his existence. Like protection and control were two sides of the same coin. Marcus signed. The other men followed suit. Within 10 minutes, they were filing out of the office, their aggression replaced with the careful deference of people who knew they'd just dodged a bullet they hadn't seen coming. When the elevator doors closed behind them, Roman finally looked at me. Your thoughts? I should have been horrified, should have been already planning my resignation. Instead, I found myself analyzing what I'd witnessed with an objectivity that probably said something concerning about my own moral boundaries. You knew about Castellano before they walked in, I said. Always know your opponent's moves before they make them. He stood, moving to the windows, and always give people a reason to choose you over whoever's threatening them. Carrot and stick, Ms. Chen, the foundation of negotiation. That wasn't negotiation, that was. I trailed off, uncertain what word fit. That was business. He turned to face me. My business. The kind you'll see more of if you stay in this position. The question is whether you can handle it. I met his eyes, that same spark from yesterday igniting again. You already know I can. Otherwise, you wouldn't have had me in that room. Something that might have been approval flickered across his face. Perhaps. Or perhaps I wanted to give you the chance to walk away now, before you're in too deep. Is that what you want? For me to walk away? The question emerged before I could stop it, carrying implications far beyond the professional. Roman's eyes darkened and the air between us suddenly felt charged with the same intensity as yesterday. What I want, he said quietly, and what's wise are often very different things. Before I could respond, his phone buzzed. He glanced at it, his expression shifting. I need to take this. We'll continue this conversation later. Dismissed again, I returned to my desk, my mind spinning. The morning's meeting had revealed several things. First, Roman's business operated in spaces where legal and illegal blurred until the distinction became meaningless. Second, he wielded power with surgical precision, using information and leverage like weapons. Third, he'd wanted me to see this, to understand what working for him really meant. And fourth, most dangerously, none of it had scared me away. The rest of the morning passed in a flurry of calls and administrative tasks. I fielded questions from contractors, scheduled meetings, and managed the constant flow of information that seemed to pour through my desk. Around noon, Patricia appeared with a concerned expression. There's someone here to see Mr. Viteri. She doesn't have an appointment. Name? Patricia's expression tightened. Isabella Castellano. The same last name Roman had mentioned in the meeting. Not a coincidence. Does he know she's here? He knows. He said to send her in. Patricia lowered her voice. Be careful with this one, Nora. Isabella isn't like other women in Roman's orbit. She's dangerous. I knocked on Roman's office door, entering at his acknowledgement. Ms. Castellano is here. Send her in. His voice was carefully neutral, but I saw tension in the set of his shoulders. Isabella Castellano swept past me seconds later, bringing with her the scent of expensive perfume and the subtle threat of violence wrapped in designer clothing. She was beautiful, dark hair falling in perfect waves, olive skin, eyes like chips of ice. Her red dress was elegant, expensive, and cut to showcase a figure maintained through dedicated effort. Roman. She didn't wait for invitation, settling into the chair across from his desk with casual familiarity. It's been too long. Isabella, He remained standing, a power position. I wasn't aware we had business to discuss. We don't. I came socially. Her eyes flicked to me, still standing near the door. Who's this? New secretary? You've gone through 3 since Victoria left. The dismissal in her tone was clear. I wasn't a person to her, just another interchangeable piece of office furniture. Ms. Chen is excellent at her job, Roman said, and something in his tone made Isabella's eyes narrow. That will be all, Nora. I left, closing the door behind me, but I couldn't entirely block out their voices. Isabella's laugh, artificial and sharp. Roman's responses, measured and careful. The sound of her heels clicking across his floor as she presumably moved closer to him. I tried to focus on work, but jealousy, irrational and unwelcome, gnawed at my chest. They had history, clearly. She called him by his first name, moved through his space like she belonged there. And she was beautiful in a way I would never be, polished and dangerous, and perfectly suited to his world. 20 minutes later, Isabella emerged, her expression satisfied. She paused at my desk, looking me over with cold assessment. A word of advice, darling. Her smile was all teeth, no warmth. Don't get too comfortable. Roman doesn't keep secretaries long, and he certainly doesn't keep them for anything beyond typing and filing. She swept to the elevator, leaving me with the clear message. Whatever I thought was developing between Roman and me, I was deluding myself. Roman appeared in his doorway moments after the elevator closed. Nora, my office. I grabbed my tablet, following him in. He closed the door behind us, something he rarely did for our interactions. What did she say to you? Nothing important. I kept my voice level. Just friendly advice about job security. Isabella's advice is never friendly. He moved closer, close enough that I could see the flecks of gold in his dark eyes. She came here to mark territory, to remind me of family connections and old alliances, and to see who you were. Why would she care who I am? Because she's perceptive enough to recognize a threat when she sees one. The words hung between us, heavy with implication. I should step back, should remind him of professional boundaries, should do any number of appropriate things. Instead, I heard myself ask, am I? A threat? Roman's jaw tightened. You're becoming a distraction I can't afford. Then fire me. I don't want to fire you. The admission came roughly, like it was pulled from somewhere deep. That's the problem. We stood there, close enough to touch, the air crackling with tension. I could see his pulse beating in his throat, could feel the heat radiating from his body. Every instinct screamed at me to close the distance, to see what would happen if I just leaned in. Just. His phone buzzed, shattering the moment. He stepped back, putting professional distance between us again. I have at 2:00. Make sure I'm not disturbed. Of course. I fled to my desk, my heart hammering, my skin flushed. What was I doing? This was my boss, a man who operated outside the law, who wielded power through intimidation and leverage, who had women like Isabella Castellano in his orbit. But when he looked at me with that intensity, when tension sparked between us like electricity, I forgot all the reasons this was dangerous. Forgot everything except the feeling of being truly seen for the first time in my life. The afternoon crawled past. At 4:30, an envelope was delivered to my desk. Inside was an invitation to a charity gala next Saturday, along with a brief note in Roman's handwriting. The foundation requires my attendance. I need someone I trust to accompany me professionally. Dress will be provided. R. I stared at the invitation, understanding the subtext. He was asking me to attend a social event with him, in front of the entire elite of the city. With people like Isabella Castellano. This was crossing a line, moving from professional into something else entirely. I should decline. Should maintain boundaries. should protect myself from whatever complicated game was playing out between us. Instead, I found myself walking to his door, knocking softly. At his acknowledgement, I entered. "I accept." Roman looked up from his computer, something like satisfaction crossing his features. "Good. Patricia will coordinate the details. I should have left then." But instead, I heard myself ask, "Why me? You could take anyone to this event. Someone from your world. Someone who understands the rules." He stood, moving around his desk toward me. "That's exactly why not them. I'm tired of people who understand the rules of my world. Tired of relationships built on leverage and alliance." He stopped close enough that I had to tilt my head back to maintain eye contact. "You look at me like I'm a person, not a name or a position. Do you have any idea how rare that is?" "You are a person," I said softly. "A complicated one, maybe. A dangerous one, definitely. But still just a person. Just a person." He smiled without humor. "No one's called me that in a long time, Nora." The use of my first name sent warmth through my chest. I should get back to work. Probably wise. But he didn't move, didn't step back, just continued looking at me with that intensity that made breathing difficult. I left his office on shaky legs, settling back at my desk. I should quit, should run from whatever was developing between us before it consumed me entirely. But even as the thought formed, I knew I wouldn't. Because somewhere between yesterday's confrontation and today's charged moments, I'd stopped being just his secretary. I was becoming something else, something dangerous and thrilling and completely unprecedented in my carefully ordered life. And God help me, I wanted to see where it led. The week leading up to the gala passed in a blur of heightened awareness. Every interaction with Roman felt weighted, loaded with the unspoken tension that had been building between us since my first day. He found reasons to call me into his office for discussions that could have happened over email. I found myself adjusting my skirt when he looked at me, smoothing my hair, small unconscious gestures that I only recognized after the fact. Wednesday brought another confrontation, this time over something trivial, a scheduling conflict I'd had to resolve without his direct input. He'd been short with me, criticizing my decision-making in a tone that would have wounded me a week ago. Instead, I'd felt that familiar spark ignite. "You hired me to manage your schedule," I'd said, meeting his eyes across his desk. "Which requires making judgment calls. If you want someone who asks permission for every decision, you hired the wrong person." His eyes had darkened with something that looked like desire. Maybe I did. But he hadn't fired me. Instead, he dismissed me with a wave of his hand, and I'd caught him watching me walk away, his expression unreadable. Thursday, Patricia pulled me aside during my lunch break. We sat in the small executive break room, just the two of us with the door closed. "You're playing with fire," she said without preamble. "I've seen how he looks at you, how you look at him." I didn't bother denying it. "I know it's complicated. Complicated doesn't begin to cover it." She stirred her coffee, choosing words carefully. Roman's last serious relationship ended 3 years ago. Her name was Victoria. She was beautiful, from the right family, understood his world. What happened? She tried to use him, passed information to a rival family, thinking she could play both sides. Patricia's expression hardened. Roman found out. I don't know exactly what happened after that, but Victoria left the city and never came back. And Roman swore he'd never let anyone close enough to hurt him again. The warning was clear. Roman didn't just guard his heart, he'd locked it away entirely. And I was foolish to think I could be different. "I'm not trying to hurt him," I said quietly. "I don't think you are. But intentions don't matter much in his world. Results do." She reached across the table, squeezing my hand. "Just be careful, Nora. Roman is capable of great loyalty, and great ruthlessness. Sometimes it's hard to tell which side you're on until it's too late. Friday afternoon, a delivery arrived. Not a shopping bag this time, but 3 large garment boxes with the logo of the city's most exclusive formal wear boutique. I signed for them, carrying the boxes into the small private bathroom near my desk. Inside the first box was an evening gown that took my breath away. Deep emerald green silk that would complement my dark hair, cut to be both elegant and subtly sensual. The second box held matching shoes, delicate strappy things that probably cost more than my monthly rent. The third held a jewelry box containing diamond earrings and a matching bracelet that caught the light like captured stars. A card rested on top of the jewelry. For tomorrow night, wear your hair down. R. I stared at the treasures laid out before me, understanding what they represented. Roman was dressing me, shaping me to fit into his world. I should have been offended by the presumption. Instead, I found myself imagining his reaction when he saw me in this dress, with these diamonds catching light against my skin. I was in dangerous territory. I knew it. But I couldn't seem to make myself care. Saturday arrived with unusual warmth for the season. I spent the morning at a salon Patricia had recommended, letting professionals shape my hair into soft waves that cascaded down my back, apply makeup that enhanced without overwhelming, pamper my hands and feet until they were smooth and polished. The woman in the mirror when they finished looked like someone else. Someone sophisticated and confident. Someone who belonged in Roman's world. I tried to reconcile her with the girl who'd taken this job just 2 weeks ago, and found the distance unsettling. A car arrived at my apartment at 6. Not Roman's usual driver, but a different man who introduced himself as Marcus and helped me into the back of a sleek black sedan. The drive to Roman's building took 15 minutes through early evening traffic. Marcus escorted me through a private entrance I'd never used before, past security who nodded respectfully, into a private elevator that required a key card to access. We rose to the top floor, the penthouse level that I'd known existed but never seen. The elevator opened directly into Roman's home, and I stepped into a space that was somehow both exactly what I'd expected and completely surprising. The main living area was all floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city, modern furniture in blacks and grays, artwork that was probably worth millions. But there were personal touches, too. Books that looked actually read, a vintage chess set positioned mid-game, photographs on a side table showing a younger Roman with people I assumed were family. "He'll be down in a moment," Marcus said, gesturing to the expansive leather sofa. "Can I bring you anything?" "I'm fine, thank you." He nodded and disappeared, leaving me alone with my racing thoughts. I moved to the windows, looking out at the city sprawling below. How many times had I looked up at buildings like this from street level, never imagining I'd stand inside one? "You wore your hair down." I turned to find Roman descending the stairs from what must be the second floor. He wore a tuxedo that fit him like a second skin, the traditional black and white somehow making him look even more dangerous, more controlled, more completely out of my league. "You asked me to." I managed to keep my voice steady, despite the way my pulse had jumped at the sight of him. His eyes moved over me slowly, taking in every detail of the dress, the diamonds, the carefully styled hair. When his gaze finally returned to mine, the intensity in it stole my breath. "You're beautiful." The words came quietly, almost reluctantly, like he hadn't meant to say them aloud. "The dress is beautiful," I corrected. "The diamonds are beautiful. I'm just the mannequin." He crossed the space between us in 3 strides, stopping close enough that I could smell his cologne, feel the heat radiating from his body. "No, the dress and diamonds are just decoration. You're what makes them worth looking at." My heart hammered against my ribs. We stood there too close, the city lights glittering behind us, the air crackling with tension that had been building for 2 weeks. Roman. I started, though I wasn't sure what I meant to say. "We should go." He stepped back, offering his arm with formal courtesy that felt like a shield against whatever had almost happened. "The car is waiting." I took his arm, letting him guide me to the elevator. The ride down was silent, heavy with unspoken words. Marcus held the car door, and I slid into the back seat, Roman settling beside me with careful distance between us. The gala was being held at one of the city's most historic hotels, all marble columns and crystal chandeliers. We joined the stream of formally dressed guests making their way inside, and I felt eyes turn toward us, assessing, calculating, wondering who I was and what I meant to Roman Viteri. "Ignore them," Roman murmured near my ear. "They're carrion birds looking for weakness to exploit." "Comforting," I replied, and felt rather than saw his smile. Inside, the ballroom was stunning. Soaring ceilings, massive chandeliers, tables draped in white linen and set with more silverware than any meal could possibly require. A small orchestra played in one corner. Waiters circulated with champagne and delicate hors d'oeuvres. Roman's hand settled at the small of my back as he guided me through the crowd, stopping occasionally to exchange greetings with people whose names I recognized from news articles and society pages. He introduced me simply as my assistant, Nora Chen. But something in the way he said it, in the possessive pressure of his hand against my back, suggested I was more than that. "Roman, darling." Isabella Castellano materialized from the crowd, resplendent in a red dress that probably cost more than my car. Her eyes raked over me with cold assessment. "I see you brought your secretary. How practical." "Isabella." Roman's voice was coolly polite. "You look well. I look exceptional." She turned her attention fully to me. "That's a lovely dress, dear. Did Roman pick it out for you?" The condescension was subtle, but clear. I smiled, channeling every ounce of confidence the dress and diamonds gave me. He has excellent taste. In clothing, certainly. Isabella's smile was all edges. "Tell me, Nora, what does one do at a charity gala when one isn't actually part of the social circle? It must be terribly boring for you." "I'm finding it educational," I replied evenly. "I'm learning a lot about the difference between class and breeding." Roman's hand tightened slightly against my back. Warning or approval, I couldn't tell. Isabella's eyes narrowed dangerously. How delightfully direct. "Roman, you've found someone with a spine. Let's see how long that lasts." She drifted away, leaving tension in her wake. "You didn't have to engage with her," Roman said quietly. "She engaged with me first. I'm not going to stand there and take being insulted." I looked up at him. "Even if it costs me this job." Something flickered in his eyes. "It won't cost you your job, but it might cost you peace. Isabella doesn't forget slights." "Then we have something in common." He actually smiled then, genuine warmth breaking through his usual control. "Come on. Let's get champagne and I'll introduce you to people who won't immediately try to destroy you." The next hour passed in a blur of introductions and small talk. Roman stayed close, his hand never leaving the small of my back, his attention split between conversations and monitoring me with an intensity I felt even when he wasn't looking directly at me. I met the mayor, who was surprisingly charming. A federal judge who seemed nervous around Roman, despite outranking him in every legal sense. Several business leaders who spoke in careful euphemisms about mutual interests and ongoing partnerships. And through it all, I felt Roman's presence like a physical force. The way he commanded space without trying. The way people deferred to him, not out of respect, but out of something closer to fear. The way his hand would occasionally brush mine, sending electricity up my arm. Dinner was announced, and we found our assigned table near the front of the room. I recognized several of our table mates from earlier introductions, business associates of Romans, along with their wives or dates. The conversation flowed easily around topics both benign and weighted with subtext I was beginning to understand. Midway through the main course, a man approached our table. Older, perhaps 60, with silver hair and a smile that didn't reach his eyes. He nodded to Roman with careful respect. Viteri, I wondered if you'd be here tonight. Castellano. Roman's voice had gone cold. I wasn't aware you'd been invited. Castellano, Isabella's father, presumably. The man Roman had mentioned during the union meeting, the one who'd been trying to force him to sell property. Oh, the foundation and I go way back. I'm a major donor. Castellano's eyes moved to me, lingering with uncomfortable intensity. And who is this lovely creature? My assistant. Roman's hand found mine under the table, lacing our fingers together in a grip that was both possessive and reassuring. Ms. Chen. Charming. Castellano's smile widened. Tell me, Ms. Chen, how do you find working for our friend Roman? He can be quite demanding. I find it rewarding, I replied, feeling Roman's thumb stroke across my knuckles. Mr. Viteri has high standards, but he also rewards excellence. I'm sure he does. The innuendo was clear. Well, I won't interrupt your evening further. Roman, we should talk soon. About the Riverside property. I think you'll find my latest offer very reasonable. I'm not selling. Not yet. Castellano's smile never wavered. But circumstances change. People change. Priorities shift. I'm a patient man. He walked away, leaving tension crackling in his wake. Under the table, Roman's grip on my hand tightened until it was almost painful. Breathe, I whispered, and felt some of the tension leave his body. He's threatening you. Roman's voice was barely audible. That's what that was. A reminder that he knows about you now. That you're a potential pressure point. I'm not afraid of him. You should be. These people, they don't play by normal rules. They'll use anyone, hurt anyone, to get what they want. I turned in my seat slightly, meeting his eyes. Then I guess I'm in good company, because neither do you. His expression shifted, something raw and unguarded flashing across his features. You should be running from me, not sitting here holding my hand. Probably. I squeezed his fingers gently, but I've never been very good at doing what I should. The orchestra began playing, couples moving to the dance floor. Roman stood, tugging me gently to my feet. Dance with me. It wasn't a question. I let him lead me to the floor, hyper-aware of every eye watching us, of Isabella's cold glare from across the room, of Castellano's knowing smirk. But none of it mattered when Roman pulled me into proper dance position, one hand at my waist, the other holding mine as we began to move to the music. I'm not very good at this, I admitted, following his lead. You're doing fine. His voice was quiet, meant only for me. Just let me lead. We moved together, closer than the formal dance required, his hand warm against my back, my fingers resting on his shoulder. Around us, the world faded. The glittering crowd, the political maneuvering, the dangerous games. For these few minutes, there was only music and movement and the feeling of being exactly where I belonged. Nora. My name was a caress. This thing between us, it's dangerous. I know. You could get hurt. Badly. These people, they'll see you as leverage against me. I know that too. Then why are you still here? I looked up at him, at the conflict clear in his eyes, and told him the simple truth. Because when I'm with you, I feel alive in a way I never have before. Because you see me. Really see me. Not just what I can do for you. And because I think maybe you need someone who sees you too. Not just the power and the name and the empire. His jaw tightened, and for a moment, I thought he might pull away. Instead, he drew me closer. until we were moving as one, until I could feel his heartbeat against mine. "You're going to ruin me," he murmured against my hair. "Or save you. Jury's still out." He actually laughed, a quiet sound that rumbled through his chest. "You're infuriatingly optimistic for someone who's seen what you've seen of my world. Someone has to balance out your brooding cynicism." We danced through 2 more songs, holding each other like the world beyond this moment didn't exist. But eventually the music ended, reality returning with the polite applause of the crowd. Roman led me back to our table, but before we could sit, Castellano appeared again, this time with Isabella on his arm. "Roman, I insist you let me steal your lovely assistant for a dance. It's only fair, after you monopolized her all evening." Everything in me screamed to refuse. Roman's hand tightened on mine, his body tensing. But we were surrounded by the city's elite, cameras discreetly capturing moments for society pages. Refusing would cause a scene, would show weakness. Of course. Roman's voice was carefully controlled, but I heard the rage beneath it. "Nora?" I met his eyes, seeing the conflict there, the barely restrained violence. "It's fine," I said quietly, then let Castellano lead me to the dance floor. Up close, he smelled of expensive cologne and something sour underneath. His hand on my waist was too familiar, his grip on my hand too tight. We began to move, and I focused on maintaining appropriate distance. "You're playing a dangerous game, Ms. Chen." His voice was conversational, but his eyes were cold. "Getting involved with Roman Viteri. I'm not involved with him. I'm his assistant. Please, I've seen how he looks at you. Like you're something precious he wants to lock away and protect." Castellano's smile was predatory. Roman's always had that weakness, caring too much about the few people he lets close. It makes him vulnerable. "I'm sure I don't know what you mean." "Of course not." His hand on my waist shifted lower, too familiar. "Here's some friendly advice. Roman's world isn't kind to innocents. The last woman he cared about ended up leaving the city with a significant limp and no desire to ever return. Is that really the future you want?" "Victoria," Patricia's story about Roman's ex. Fear clawed at my throat, but I kept my expression neutral. "Thank you for the concern, but I can take care of myself." "Can you?" His grip tightened painfully. "Because from where I'm standing, you're just another piece on the board, and Roman will sacrifice you the moment it's strategically advantageous." The music ended. I pulled away from him, stepping back. "The only person trying to use me as a piece on the board is you, Mr. Castellano, and I'm not interested in playing." I walked away before he could respond, heading not back to our table but toward the terrace doors. I needed air, needed space to process the fear Castellano had deliberately kindled. Outside, the night air was cool against my flushed skin. I leaned against the balustrade, looking out at the city lights. "He threatened you." Roman's voice came from behind me. I hadn't heard him approach, but I wasn't surprised he'd followed. "He tried to scare me." "Did it work?" I turned to face him. He stood in shadow, his expression unreadable, tension radiating from every line of his body. "Should it have?" "Yes." He moved closer, into the light spilling from the ballroom. "Everything he said is true, Nora. My world is violent and dangerous. People I care about get hurt, and I'm not sure I'm good enough to resist using you the way he suggested." "Then let me make that decision." I closed the distance between us, placing my hand on his chest, feeling his heart thunder beneath my palm. "Stop trying to protect me from you. I'm not a child. I'm not stupid. I see exactly what you are, and I'm still here. You're seeing what I let you see. The business meetings, the negotiations. You haven't seen the rest. The violence. The things I've done to maintain power. Then show me. trust me enough to see all of it. He grabbed my wrist, his grip firm but not painful. You don't know what you're asking. I know exactly what I'm asking. I'm asking you to stop treating me like I'm fragile. I'm asking you to stop deciding what I can handle. I'm asking you to let me in. We stood there, locked in silent battle, his eyes searching mine for something I hoped he'd find. Around us, the night wrapped close, the sounds of the gala a distant murmur. Finally, he spoke. Come with me tomorrow. I have business to conduct. The kind I normally hide from people like you. You want to see my world? Really see it? I'll show you. All right. You might not like what you see. Probably not. I didn't look away. Show me anyway. His thumb stroked across my racing pulse. You're either very brave or very foolish. Can't I be both? The corner of his mouth lifted in something that wasn't quite a smile. We should go back inside. People will talk. Let them. Nora. My name was a warning and a caress. You're making this very difficult. Good. You deserve to be challenged. He released my wrist but didn't step back. We stood close enough to kiss, close enough that I could see the conflict warring in his eyes. Want versus wisdom. Desire versus duty. Tomorrow, he said finally. I'll send a car at 10. Wear jeans and boots. Where we're going, the dress won't help. I'll be ready. We returned to the ballroom together, his hand once again at the small of my back, branding me as his in front of everyone watching. Isabella's eyes followed us with cold calculation. Castellano's smile was knowing and predatory. But I didn't care, because tomorrow, Roman would show me the truth, the darkness he'd been protecting me from. And then I'd finally understand exactly what I was getting myself into. The thought should have terrified me. Instead, I felt only anticipation. Whatever came next, I was ready for it. The black SUV arrived at exactly 10, Marcus at the wheel again. I climbed into the back wearing my most worn jeans, practical boots, and a leather jacket I'd owned since college. Roman sat in the far corner, dressed similarly down to the dark jeans and fitted black Henley that revealed arms more muscular than his suits suggested. Good morning? I settled into the seat, noting the tension in his posture. Morning. He didn't look at me, his gaze fixed on something outside the window. Last chance to change your mind. Not changing my mind. He nodded once and we pulled into traffic. The drive took us away from the gleaming downtown towers, through neighborhoods that grew progressively more industrial. Warehouses replaced office buildings. Chain-link fences lined empty lots. The few people on the streets had the hard look of those who'd learned to survive in places where law enforcement was more rumor than reality. We stopped at a large warehouse complex surrounded by razor wire fencing. Security guards, Roman's men, clearly, opened gates to let us through. Marcus parked near a loading dock, where several other vehicles were already present. Stay close to me, Roman said as we exited the vehicle. Don't speak unless I tell you to. These men respect strength, not kindness. I nodded, following him into the warehouse. Inside, the space was cavernous and dimly lit. Shipping containers were stacked along one wall. A group of men stood near the center, surrounding something I couldn't see clearly. They parted as Roman approached, revealing a man kneeling on the concrete floor, hands bound behind his back, blood streaming from his nose. My stomach turned, but I kept my expression neutral. Mr. Viteri. One of Roman's men stepped forward. He finally admitted it. He's been skimming for 6 months. About 40,000 total. Roman circled the kneeling man slowly, his movements predatory. Tommy, we've known each other a long time, haven't we? Roman, please. The man's voice was thick with fear and blood. I can explain. I'm sure you can. Roman's voice was conversational, almost friendly. You have a gambling problem. Your wife left you. Your daughter needs surgery you can't afford. Very sympathetic circumstances. I was going to pay it back. Were you? Roman stopped in front of him. Or were you going to keep stealing until I noticed, then disappear like the coward you are? The casual cruelty in his tone made my skin prickle. This was the Roman that Castellano had referenced, the dangerous man beneath the polished exterior. Please. Tommy was crying now. I'll do anything. I'll work it off. Just don't. Roman held up a hand, silencing him. He turned to his men. How much has he taken? 42,000, give or take. Double it, 84,000. That's what he owes now. Roman looked down at the kneeling man. You're going to work for me until it's paid off, every dollar accounted for. And Tommy, if you steal even a penny more, if you run, if you even think about betraying me again. He didn't finish the threat. He didn't need to. The implications were crystal clear. Thank you. Tommy collapsed forward, sobbing. Thank you, thank you. Get him out of here. Roman walked away, heading toward an office at the back of the warehouse. I followed, feeling the eyes of every man in the room on me. Inside the office, Roman moved to a wall safe, spinning the combination with practiced ease. He pulled out several thick envelopes, setting them on the desk. That wasn't what you expected. It wasn't a question. You were merciful, I said. He thought you'd kill him. I considered it. Roman's tone was matter of fact. Theft is usually punishable by death in my organization. But Tommy has 3 kids and a sick daughter. Killing him would have been satisfying but counterproductive. So you'll work him like a slave instead. His eyes snapped to mine, sharp with warning. Would you prefer I'd put a bullet in his head? Because I can still arrange that. No. I held his gaze. I'm just noting that mercy in your world comes with strings attached. Everything in my world comes with strings attached. He gestured to the envelopes on the desk. Including this. Protection money from businesses in the warehouse district. They pay me monthly, and in return, no one bothers them. No robberies, no vandalism, no problems with the unions or city inspectors. Extortion. Protection. The police can't keep these businesses safe. I can. He opened one envelope, rifling through the cash inside. Some call it a shakedown. I call it providing a service the city refuses to provide. I moved closer, looking at the stacks of bills. Hundreds, mostly. Thousands of dollars in each envelope. And if they refuse to pay? Then they don't receive protection. And usually, within a week or two, they change their minds. His smile was cold. Funny how a few broken windows and a robbery can shift someone's perspective on the value of security. You break their windows to prove they need you. I don't have to. There are plenty of people willing to do that for free. I just make sure my clients don't experience it. The rationalization was smooth, practiced. I could see how people convinced themselves this was acceptable. How Roman himself had woven a narrative where he was providing legitimate service rather than running a protection racket. This is what you wanted to show me. I met his eyes. The reality of how you maintain power. Part of it, there's more. He gathered the envelopes, returning them to the safe. But yes, this is who I am, Nora. Not the man in the tuxedo at charity galas. This. Someone who takes money through threat of violence. Someone who has people beaten for stealing. Someone who operates outside the law, because the law is for people with less power than I have. I should have been disgusted. Should have been planning my exit from his world, from this job, from whatever was developing between us. Instead, I found myself analyzing it clinically, separating the man from his actions. Why did you want me to see this? Because I'm tired of you looking at me like I'm a good man. The admission came roughly, I'm not. I've done terrible things. I'll do more terrible things. And if you're going to be in my life in any capacity, you need to understand that. In your life, I repeated. Not just your employee. His jaw tightened. You're already more than my employee. You know it. I know it. Everyone at that gala last night knew it. And that scares you. It terrifies me. He moved closer, backing me against the desk. Because people I care about become targets. Vulnerabilities, weaknesses that enemies exploit. Like Victoria? His expression shuddered. Who told you about her? Patricia mentioned her. So did Castellano. I held his gaze despite the dangerous edge that had entered his eyes. What happened to her? For a long moment, I thought he wouldn't answer. Then he sighed, some of the tension leaving his body. Victoria was smart, beautiful, from the right family. We were together for 2 years. I thought I loved her. His voice was flat, emotionless. Turns out she was passing information to the Castellano family. Everything I told her, every plan, every vulnerability, she was a plant from the beginning. What did you do to her? I exposed her to her own family. Let them know she'd been caught betraying them by getting sloppy, letting emotion cloud her judgment. The Castellanos dealt with her internally. His smile was bitter. Last I heard, she was in Europe, living under a new name, with a permanent limp and a healthy fear of crossing anyone with power. Did you love her? I thought I did, but now I'm not sure I even knew her well enough to love her. He reached up, tucking a strand of hair behind my ear with surprising gentleness. That's why this terrifies me. With you, I don't know what's real and what's just mutual attraction mixed with adrenaline and bad decisions. Maybe it doesn't have to be one or the other. Maybe it's both. Maybe. His thumb traced my jawline. But if I let myself care about you, really care, and you turn out to be another Victoria, I'm not her. Prove it. The challenge hung between us. I understood what he was asking. Trust had to be earned in his world, demonstrated through action rather than words. And I had no proof to offer except my presence here, my willingness to see the darkness and not run. I will, I said quietly. Give me time, and I'll prove it. His phone buzzed, breaking the moment. He checked it, his expression darkening. We need to go. There's a problem at the docks. We returned to the SUV, Marcus already having the engine running. The drive to the waterfront took 20 minutes, tension thick in the vehicle. Roman made several calls, his voice clipped and angry, though he kept the details vague. The docks were a maze of shipping containers and cranes, the air thick with salt and diesel. Marcus navigated to a section that looked abandoned, parking near a warehouse with broken windows and graffiti-covered walls. Stay in the car. Roman's tone brooked no argument. Roman, this is different. This is dangerous, even for me. You stay here, or Marcus drives you home right now. I nodded reluctantly, watching him exit the vehicle and disappear into the warehouse with 4 of his men. Marcus remained behind the wheel, his attention fixed on the building, his hand resting on what I realized was a gun in a shoulder holster. Minutes crawled past. 5, 10. I strained to hear anything over the ambient sounds of the docks, but the warehouse remained silent. Then gunfire erupted. 3 shots in rapid succession, the sound sharp even through the SUV's heavy doors. Marcus swore, reaching for his phone. More shots, shouting, the sounds of chaos. The warehouse door burst open, and Roman's men emerged, half carrying someone between them. Roman brought up the rear, his shirt torn and blood on his knuckles, but moving under his own power. Marcus was out of the vehicle instantly, opening the back door. They loaded the injured man into the 3rd row of seats. I could see now it was one of Roman's guards, blood soaking through his shoulder. Roman climbed in beside me, his breathing harsh. Drive, Now! Marcus didn't need to be told twice. We peeled away from the docks as sirens began wailing in the distance. What happened? I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. Ambush. The Castellanos. Roman pulled out his phone, making another call. They were waiting for us. Someone tipped them off about the shipment coming in today. The implication was clear. He had a leak in his organization. Someone close enough to know his schedule, his shipments, his movements. The injured man groaned from the back seat, and I turned to look at him. He was young, maybe 30, his face pale with blood loss. He needs a hospital, I said. Can't. Gunshot wounds get reported. Roman was still on his phone, coordinating something. We have a doctor who handles this. He could die before we get there. Then he dies. Roman's voice was flat. That's the job. He knew the risks. The callousness shocked me into action. I unbuckled my seatbelt, climbing into the back row despite Marcus's protest. The injured man's eyes were unfocused, his breathing shallow. What's your name? I asked, pressing my hands against his shoulder to slow the bleeding. Marco. The word came out weak. Marco Santino. Okay, Marco. Stay with me. You're going to be fine. I looked at Roman. How far to this doctor? 10 minutes. He doesn't have 10 minutes. Pull over. Now. Nora. Pull over or he bleeds out in your car. Your choice. Something in my tone must have convinced him. He ordered Marcus to stop at a gas station we were passing. While Roman went inside to buy supplies, I kept pressure on Marco's wound, talking to him to keep him conscious. Roman returned with a first aid kit. I used it to pack the wound properly, applying pressure bandages that would hold until we reached the doctor. It wasn't perfect medical care, but it would keep him alive. When we finally arrived at an unmarked building in an industrial area, a gray-haired man was waiting. He helped us get Marco inside, into what looked like a well-equipped medical suite, hidden behind the facade of a closed factory. He'll live, the doctor said after examining Marco. Lost a lot of blood, but the bullet went through clean. I'll keep him here tonight. Make sure there's no infection. Outside, Roman leaned against the SUV, his face drawn with exhaustion and anger. I approached him carefully, unsure what to say. You saved his life, he said without looking at me. Marco's been with me for 5 years, has a wife and a baby daughter. He finally turned to face me. Thank you. You shouldn't have to thank me for basic human decency. In my world, basic human decency is often in short supply. He straightened, some of the tension leaving his shoulders. You're full of surprises, Nora Chen. I worked as an EMT during college, trauma response training. I hadn't thought about those days in years. The summer I'd spent riding ambulances and learning to handle emergencies. Guess it came back when I needed it. Still, you stayed calm under pressure, challenged me when I was being cold. His eyes searched mine. You're not what I expected when I hired you. What did you expect? Someone competent but forgettable. Someone who would manage my schedule and stay invisible. His smile was wry. Instead, I got someone who argues with me, challenges my decisions, and makes me question choices I've made for years. Is that a bad thing? I don't know yet. He pushed off from the SUV. Come on, I'll take you home. The drive back to my apartment was quiet, both of us processing the day's events. When we pulled up to my building, Roman walked me to my door despite my protests. Tomorrow, take the day off, he said. After today, you've earned it. I'm fine. Nora. His hand came up, cupping my cheek with unexpected tenderness. Take the day. That's an order. Before I could respond, he leaned in and pressed his lips to my forehead, a gesture somehow more intimate than a kiss. Then he was gone, leaving me standing in my doorway with my heart racing and my world fundamentally shifted. I'd seen Roman's darkness today. The violence, the moral compromises, the casual acceptance of brutality. And instead of running, I'd stayed. I'd helped. I'd proven myself in his world. The question was, what came next? Monday, I defied Roman's order and went to work. His expression when I walked in at 8:30 was a mixture of exasperation and something that looked like pride. Over the following weeks, I became more integrated into his world. He stopped hiding the nature of his business, letting me sit in on meetings that ranged from legitimate real estate deals to negotiations that were clearly anything but legal. I learned the language of his empire, the euphemisms, the unspoken rules, the careful dance of power and violence. Isabella Castellano became a recurring problem. She appeared at the office unannounced, called at odd hours, made it clear she viewed me as temporary and disposable. But Roman never entertained her advances, never gave her the attention she so obviously craved. "She's trying to create division," Patricia explained one afternoon. "The Castellanos want Roman rattled, off balance. You're the easiest target. Let them try." I'd grown bolder in my time with Roman, more confident in my place in his world. One evening, Roman invited me to his penthouse for dinner. Not business, just us. I arrived to find the space transformed with candles, soft music, the city lights glittering beyond the windows. "I've been thinking," he said over wine and pasta he'd cooked himself. "About us. About what this is. What do you think it is? Dangerous. Complicated. Probably a terrible idea." He set down his fork, meeting my eyes. "And completely inevitable." "Inevitable?" He stood, moving around the table to pull me to my feet. "From the moment you walked into my office in that navy skirt, challenging me with those eyes, I was lost. I just didn't want to admit it." His kiss was everything I'd imagined and more. Claiming, possessive, but also surprisingly tender. We moved to the couch, to the bedroom, the night unfolding in ways that felt both new and strangely familiar. Later, lying in his arms with the city spread beneath us, he murmured against my hair, "You've ruined me for anyone else." "Good," I replied, and felt his chest rumble with laughter. But happiness in Roman's world was never simple. 2 weeks later, everything changed. I was leaving work late, documents for the morning meeting tucked in my bag. The parking garage was mostly empty, my footsteps echoing off concrete. I didn't hear them approach until hands grabbed me, a cloth covering my mouth and nose, chemical smell, darkness. I woke in a basement, bound to a chair, head pounding. Across from me sat Castellano himself, Isabella standing behind him like a vengeful shadow. "Finally awake," Castellano said pleasantly. "We have so much to discuss, Ms. Chen, starting with exactly how much you mean to Roman Viteri." The ransom call came to Roman at 3 a.m. I knew because he told me later, his voice raw with an emotion I'd never heard from him before. Fear. What I experienced in that basement was terror unlike anything I'd known. Castellano's questions, Isabella's cold enjoyment of my situation, the hours that stretched with no sense of time or hope. But I didn't break. Didn't give them the information they wanted about Roman's operations, his plans, his vulnerabilities. Every time they pressured me, I thought about Marco bleeding in the SUV, about the way Roman had looked at me in his office, about the choice I'd made to stay in his world. Roman came for me with an army. The assault was swift, brutal, efficient. Gunfire, shouting, chaos. Then his hands on my face, checking for injuries, his voice breaking as he whispered my name. The aftermath was complicated. Castellano disappeared, permanently, I suspected, though Roman never confirmed it. Isabella fled the city. Several members of their organization either switched allegiance to Roman or vanished. I should never have let you in, Roman said the night I returned to his penthouse, both of us battered but alive. This is why I don't let people close. Too late, I replied, taking his hand. I'm already close. You can't scare me away now. 6 months later, Roman made an announcement that shocked the city's underworld. He was establishing a foundation, legitimately this time, to provide scholarships and opportunities for young people trapped in neighborhoods controlled by organized crime. You did this, he said, as we reviewed the paperwork. We did this, I corrected. Together. The foundation grew. By the 2nd anniversary of my kidnapping, which we never spoke about but never forgot, we'd helped over 100 kids escape the cycle of violence and poverty. 2 years later, at 27, I stood in Roman's office, our office now, reviewing applications for the next scholarship class. Roman entered, closing the door behind him. Remember the first time I called you into this office? He asked. You criticized my skirt. I smiled, adjusting the hem of the considerably shorter skirt I wore now, chosen deliberately to provoke exactly the reaction I got. His eyes darkening with desire, mixed with that possessive edge that still made my pulse race. I was an idiot. He crossed to me, pulling me into his arms. Trying to push you away before I admitted how much I wanted you close. You were, I agreed, but I forgave you. He knelt then, suddenly, pulling a small box from his pocket. Nora Chen, you came into my life and changed everything. Made me want to be better, do better, build something beyond fear and power. Marry me, be my partner in everything. I looked at him. This dangerous, complicated, beautiful man who'd shown me his darkest parts and trusted me not to run. Who'd built something meaningful from Empire of Shadows. Yes, I said simply. Always yes. He stood, sliding the ring onto my finger, kissing me with the same intensity as that first time in his penthouse. Outside, the city spread before us, full of possibilities. We'd started with a skirt and a challenge, built something from darkness and desire, and somehow, impossibly, found light. I love you, he murmured against my lips. I know, I replied. You always have. You just needed someone brave enough to see it. And in the office where our story began, with the city as our witness, we began the next chapter together.